Hey, what is going on guys, RVZ Stealth here, and in today's video we're going to be breaking down the Reworked Wits end and take a look at which champions are now best with it and at what point in the game you should be picking up the item on those champions. And then if you guys have yet to join my club on club.gg, there will be a link down in the description below. Super easy way for you to just earn free skins for playing League, so if you're interested in that, then be sure to check it out. So if we just quickly take a look at what actually changed for Wits End in this patch, the total cost got increased by 500 gold, attack speed went up by 10%, magic resist up by 10, it got movement speed now, so it now has 5% move speed, and the on-hit damage, it got changed from a flat 42 to 15 to 80 scaling, and when you take a look at this, Wits End is now a better item later on into the game, so because that on-hit damage is a lot weaker in the early levels, it's no longer as good of a rush item on a lot of champions, and because it has 80 damage there at level 18 and it's gonna have a lot more damage once you do get levels, it is a better item later on into the game now. And now it does also have a healing effect on it, so it's gonna heal you for the amount of on-hit damage dealt by Wits End, and it's not as effective for ranged champions, but this is only gonna come into effect when you are below half HP. And then just keep in mind, pretty much for every single champion that would build Wits End in this patch, it still is pretty much a situational item. You're only going to want to pick it up if you are up against a heavy AP enemy team comp, or if they do have at least like a few AP threats. If they got like no real AP threats on their team, then getting a Wits End isn't going to be very efficient for you in this patch, so just keep that in mind. It still is more so of a situational item on most champions. So if we start off by taking a look at top lane champions that are doing best with Wits End right now, Kayle is definitely doing very well with it in this patch. Now if you do go for more of an on-hit build on Kayle, then incorporating the Wits End into your build path as your third item after Blade of the Ruined King, Rageblade, and then Wits End is doing really good on Kayle for this patch. You can also go for a Wits End Rush if you're up against an AP top laner, so Wits Rush is actually pretty good on Kayle right now. You go Wits and then Nashers and then Rageblade is a really good build on her for this patch, and then you can also go like Bork, Wits End, Rageblade. You can go for it like as a rush, second or third item, kind of depending on if you're up against an AP top laner. If the enemy team does have more AP in other roles, then you would want to pick it up later on in the game. And then for Jax right now, he's doing pretty good with it slotted in as a second or third item. Trinity Force is just way too good on Jax to really pass it up as a first item, so Wits isn't the best first item on Jax, but if you do go for Trinity Force and then Wits End second or Wits End third, it can be really good if you are up against an AP top laner. So a build that's working really good right now on Jax is Trinity Force into Spirit's Ocean, and then if you go Wits third item, that's doing great on him for this patch. So if the enemy team comp does have like a AP mid, if they have an AP support as well, and an AP jungler, then going for that Wits End third item is just going to be very, very good for you in this patch. So Tryndamere is actually another top laner that's doing good with the item in this patch. Tryndamere is actually doing pretty good with more of an on-hit build in this patch right now of a Nashers into an Essence Reaver, and then grabbing the Wits End as your third item. He's also doing pretty good if you want to go for more of an AD build with a Wits End into Static Shiv and Infinity Edge. Some Tryndamere players, some high elo Tryndamere players are rushing the Wits End if they are up against an AP top laner. So if the enemy team does have an AP top laner and an AP jungler, then going Wits End Rush is going to be really good on Tryndamere in that situation. And then the Neeko top lane pick is doing really good with the Wits End as a rush item up against AP. So Wits into Blade of the Ruined King and then Rageblade. And then also if you're going up against an AD top laner, but the enemy team comp does still have some AP in their comp, then going for Bork into Rageblade and then Wits End as your third item is also a good build path on Neeko. And then a little bit more of an interesting one here, Mundo is actually doing very well with Wits End as either a second or a third item in this patch. So if the enemy team comp is full AP, Mundo is a great pick in this patch for the top lane because Mundo's always been a pretty good pick against heavy AP comps. He's always been a pretty good counter pick to some AP top laners like the Rumble. He's also a pretty good pick right now into things like Sylas, Ornn, Cho'Gath. He's great into other AP tanks, and in this patch going for something like Spirit Visage, Wits End, and then Adaptive Helm just makes you extremely tanky. You have a ton of magic resist, so you're pretty much never going to die, and because of that Wits End, you're still actually going to be able to deal quite quite a bit of damage with Mundo. And then for Gnar in this patch, if you're up against an AP top like a Vladimir, a Kennen, Rumble, Teemo, then going Wits End Rush is a great option on Gnar for this patch. So Wits End into Black Cleaver, and then Frozen Mallet is a good build path. And then if you're up against an AD top laner, but the enemy team comp still does have quite a bit of AP, then grabbing a Wits End third, going Black Cleaver, Frozen Mallet, and Wits End is also another good option for this patch. And then for Aurelia right now, pretty much all Aurelia players do go Wits End Rush if they are up against an AP top laner. So Wits End is just a great item on Aurelia. It's always been a pretty underrated item on the champion, even before Wits End did get reworked. So Wits End into Trinity Force and then into Sterix is a great build path on Aurelia if you're up against an AP top laner. And then Renekton is another champion that can do pretty well with Wits End. You wouldn't really think of this as an item that you'd see Renekton pick up, but going for your normal build path of like Spirit into Tiamat, Black Cleaver, Wits End as a third item there, it just does give you some more dueling potential if you're up against an AP top laner or a heavy AP enemy team comp. The amount of healing that you can have with Renekton is also really good because you got the Conquer heal, you got your Q heals, you also have the Wits End heal, so when you do fall low on HP with Renekton, the amount of healing that can come out can really surprise the opponent, and you can turn a lot of situations because of all that bonus healing. And then Kled is another pick that in previous patches you'd never really see him pick up the item, but because of the changes it does work pretty well on him as a third item. So your Black Cleaver into Titanic Hydra and then Wits End as your third item is a great choice on Kled for 9.7. And then even on Yasuo, it's not a bad rush item. It doesn't perform as well on Yasuo as other champions just because Yasuo with his core build of a Shiv and IE, you really do want to hit that as quick as possible. So going for the Wits End does kind of delay that a little bit, but if you're up against AP top laner, AP jungler, then Wits End just does give you so much value. So it is still a pretty good rush item in that situation on Yasuo. And then for Shen in this patch, Shen can do pretty good with it as a Wits End Rush, and Shen's a pretty good pick right now into any like AP tank in the top lane. You don't see a lot of them, but if you do and you can pick Shen into that, then you go Wits End, you got the magic damage from that, you also have the magic damage from your Q, so it makes it very hard for those tanks to itemize against you, and you're always going to be able to deal quite a bit of damage no matter what they do build. So Wits End Rush into Titanic and Sunfire Cape is a pretty good build on Shen for this patch. And then if we take a look at some junglers, there's definitely not as many junglers doing well with the item in this patch, but there is still a few. So the first one here is Udyr. Udyr with Warrior into Trinity Force and then Wits End third item is great on Udyr. And then if the enemy team comp is really heavy AP, you can even skip going your Trinity Force second and go for Warrior, Wits End, and then Trinity Force. So it just kind of depends on the situation. And then for Master Yi in this patch, Bloodrazor into Rageblade and then Wits End is actually his best performing build for 9.7. A lot of players are either going for Bloodrazor, Rageblade, and then Blade of the Ruined King, or Bloodrazor, Rageblade, and Wits End. So depending on if the enemy has AP, then go Wits End. If they don't, then go Blade of the Ruined King as your third item. And then for Kindred in this patch, there's two different options right now. So Bloodrazor into Black Cleaver and then Wits End, really good build path, and then Bloodrazor into Blade of the Ruined King and Wits End. So depending on if you do want some more tankiness for yourself, if the enemy team comp is stacking a lot of armor, then Black Cleaver is a good option. If you're snowballing really hard, if you just want more raw damage, then Bloodrazor into Bork and then Wits End is a good choice for this patch. And then the final jungler here that does actually very well with Wits End right now is Warwick. So Warwick with a Cinderhulk, Titanic, and then Wits End. Really nice build path for Warwick right now. He does really good into these AP comps in this patch. And you can also go for Wits End second on Warwick as well. Like I said for a few champions earlier, if the enemy team comp doesn't have as much AP, then Wits End third item is great. If they have a ton of AP, then Wits End just as your second item there is going to suit you really well for this patch. You can even go for something like Cinderhulk, Wits End, and then Spirit Visage on Warwick for this patch, and even an Adaptive Helm later on, so kind of similar to that Mundo build. You can just get a ton of magic resist, and it just makes it very hard for heavy AP comps to kill you. And then as for AD carries in this patch, there's a couple of different AD carries that do pretty well with Wits as a third item. So both Vayne, along with Kog'Maw and Varus, do pretty well with the Bork, Rageblade, and then Wits End build. So going for the Wits End third item there. And then for Twitch and Kalista, Blade of the Ruined King into Runins and Wits End does do very well as a build path. Now you don't really want to go Wits End first though on these AD carries. I know in the past you would go Wits End on champions like the Kog'Maw, the Varus, but it's no longer a very good rush item just because the damage you get in the early game from it now for these AD carries is not really enough. So that is going to be all for this video, guys. I don't think there's any mid laners or any supports that you would want to be building this item on for this patch, so I did not include any in this video. If there are and you think I missed some, then be sure to let me know down in the comments below. But with that being said, guys, if you did enjoy this video, then be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.